Hello everybody, it's Sierra, the Artsy Badger, and this week we're doing the Draw This in Your Style challenge. Now I know that I am super duper late to this challenge. I think it originally started in like July of this year, but you know, I've only had a YouTube channel since the beginning of September. And then all of October was dedicated to Inktober, so I think I should be allowed to do it now. Regardless, I am going to be doing 4 Draw This in Your Style challenges. I picked 4 people who are artists that I follow on Instagram as well as on YouTube. And if you don't follow any of these people, I don't know why you're following me. The first person I chose was Casey Golden. She has this really simplistic cartoon style and she colors it in with pretty flat washes of watercolor. I've been watching her for a while. She's honestly probably my biggest inspiration for doing the art YouTube thing. She's just always coming up with really creative content, and I feel like whenever I watch her videos, I always feel inspired to make something myself. So this is my interpretation of her cactus girl. Next up, we have Deena Norland. I don't watch her all that regularly, but I really love the way she draws creatures, and her style in general is just really appealing to me, and I like the way she colors things, so I figured I should do a little tribute to her in this video. So I think the biggest difference between her style and my style is that I take a little bit more of a realistic approach to animals. I do think that all her animals have realistic proportions. They're not overly simplified, but mine are just slightly more to the realism side than hers are. One thing I'm really envious of with her is I feel like she's really good at creating characters that aren't out of this world, but still are very unique. Her characters, they don't look like they belong in a different universe, or they don't have completely crazy hairdos like you see in anime to distinguish them as the main character. They overall just look pretty normal. And I think that that's really admirable that she can make a character be so distinctive but also look so normal, because I find myself always drawing really normal looking people, but I feel like they aren't worthy of being characters. But maybe that's just because I'm the most critical of my own art. Next up, we have Gel Arts. I feel like she's a pretty underrepresented YouTuber, but she has a really great style. This work is done digitally, but I feel like all of her works have sort of a very traditional tone to them, almost painterly tone. This girl's face was so hard to get. I don't know why. it's not any more complicated than the other faces that I did, but something about her eyes, the softness in the original, was really hard for me to capture, so I ended up just kind of giving up and just made her have kind of generic eyes, I guess. I think the raven is really cute up on her shoulder, and I'm actually really proud of this hand. Next up, we have Catnip, or Catherine Illustrations. I'm not sure what her official name is on YouTube, but her Instagram handle is Catnip Illustration. And this one was probably the hardest one, and the one that I like the result of the least. I think it's because I had such a small amount of space and I tried to do the full body position. It was just hard to cram it in, and I don't mind the body's fine, but the face just, it's bleh. Bleh. I think the whole pose and outfit turned out okay, but her face just ended up being really crammed, and I just don't really like the way it looked. So I'm kind of sad about that. Maybe I should have just done a bust of the girl, but I kind of wanted to have some variety. I didn't want to just have a bunch of girl faces on the page, even though there still are just a bunch of girl faces on the page. But yeah, so tried to go for a full body, and it ended up being my least favorite one. So as you guys might know, my favorite medium to work with is Copic markers, especially for this kind of cartoony style. I really like this evenness that you can get with Copic markers, and the shading with these markers is just so delicious. Anyway, the way I went about coloring these characters, I tried to keep it as close to the original as possible, at least in tone. I changed a few things here and there, but overall tried to keep the colors in the same realm as the originals. But I did do my sort of style of coloring in things. I didn't match the way that they put blush on or shadows. I did it the way that I do those things, if that makes sense. So with Dina's, I tried to keep it in the same color family, bright, colorful. This big cat, jaguar-like character ends up being a little streaky. I thought about going over it again with the blue color, but I didn't want it to get too dark, so I chose not to. But in person, it looks less streaky than it does on camera. Her skin tone was probably the hardest one to replicate. I ended up being kind of gutsy and using a really dark shadow. I don't normally do that, but I like the way that it turned out. It makes it look more alive, I think. So, you know, sometimes it's good to take risks. These eyes, I really wish I could have gotten them as bright as she got hers. Hers is digitally drawn, so maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know. I thought about using, I have these fluorescent colors in my collection of Copic markers, and I thought about using those, but I was worried about it turning out too highlighter-y, but in retrospect, I really probably should have used those instead, because the eyes are a lot more dull than they are in the original, and I like the bright eyes of the original piece, so that's probably my biggest regret of that one. So with Gel Art's piece, this one was probably the hardest one for me to color. Her palette is pretty monochromatic, I guess might be the right word, and I feel like I ended up just muddying it. Hers doesn't look bad, but in mine, everything kind of blends together too much, I think. The part I struggled with the most was definitely the raven. You'll see here in a second that it just kind of gets lost. It doesn't stand out very much. I don't know if I should have used a lighter color or something, because when you look at her piece, the raven seems to be in a similar color family to everything else, and yet it stands out a lot better, and I don't know if that's just because it's a digital piece. I don't work with digital, so I don't really know what the tricks are in that. But one of the things I admire a lot about this artist is her earthy tones, and so I tried to make sure to capture that. I muted down this red shirt with brown tones, and you'll see later that I shade the face and a bit of the hair with gray tones instead of warmer tones to try and tie it in with the grayish purple that is the main color of the piece. An even more limited color palette. She really likes to just work with pinks and blues. She doesn't even give the girl a skin tone. I do give the girl a skin tone just because I think that's an important part of distinguishing it as my style. I don't usually omit skin tones unless I don't have a skin tone. So that was just kind of my way of trying to make it look more like my style. But like I said before, this one was pretty challenging just because it was such a big pose in such a small amount of space. It's good to practice that kind of stuff, and I think it turned out okay in the end, but it's definitely my least favorite of the 4. The original isn't my least favorite of the 4, but my interpretation of it is my least favorite of the 4. Here I'm just adding highlights and pupils to the eyes. And their Instagram handles. So you guys should check them all out because they're all amazing artists. If you aren't already following them, I'd be pretty surprised. And that's it. Here's a few close-ups of the finished product. I hope you like the results. I had a really fun time participating in this challenge. Sorry that I'm so late to the game. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next week.